guys, so we're gonna go over some lat mobility, man. The lats, the muscle kind of under your armpit, runs all the way down the side of your back, covers up a big portion of your back, but it's an internal rotator, meaning it internally rotates our shoulders, can kind of prohibit us from having good shoulder mobility, especially good overhead mobility. So we're gonna go over some mobilizations to help kind of clear up that lat so that way we can kind of start to improve that shoulder range of motion and improve that overhead range of motion. So we're gonna start on the ground here and do some SMR with a foam roller. I don't do a ton of SMR anymore, but I do like it on the lats because the lats I've come to find is a muscle that can use some good soft tissue work on probably 90+% of people because it gets neglected a lot. So the best way I like to kind of do some soft tissue work on the lats here is get a standard foam roller, try to make it semi-firm, and you can start by getting right underneath the armpit there. And you can start just by rolling, you know, the length of the rib cage and getting the meat of it there. But the lat is a very big muscle. There's much more to it than just this aspect to it right here. And you can tell, you'll be able to find some spots here that are already tender. So I'm taking this top leg here, I'm pressing the foot into the ground to lift my hips up to get my body weight onto that lat. And we're just gonna roll that guy out. Once you go through a few passes, you can kind of start to focus on the areas that were a little bit more tender. And we can begin this kind of sawing back and forth motion. I'm just kind of sliding and gliding across the top of the foam roller, going forwards and backwards. You can start to rock and actually roll your body over the foam roller, forwards and backwards, as opposed to rolling the foam roller. And you're gonna start to hit the anterior and posterior aspects of the lat. And you can do this on the spots that were a little bit more tender. And then the last thing I like to do on these spots is actually introduce some movement. So now I'll start to move that arm around. I'll protract, I'll retract, I'll bring it out here, I'll internally and externally rotate, all while tacking down on those tender spots, those trigger points. And then I'll even try to introduce some overhead movement with that arm while I am on these spots. So this is where I'll start, and I'll kind of do this for all of those tender trigger points, just to try to free some of that stuff up. And you'll notice that when I come up just from this, just from a couple minutes here, that there will be a big improvement if I kind of straighten the camera out here. Now from my left to right side here, I mean, just from that right there, you can see the difference from straight on. You know, if I come from the side here, I mean, that's noticeably different. So you can't say that, you know, foam rolling doesn't do anything, all right? Especially when it comes to soft tissue work like this. So already we've restored a good part of that range of motion just by tacking down those tissues, internally, externally rotating the shoulder and addressing some of those movements. If we want to take it a step further here, we can get a band set up. Position the camera here so you can see this. We get a band set up here, and we're going to use this guy to kind of give us some joint distraction. Try to find the best angle here. So what we're going to do is going to loop my hand through this band so it's nice and attached. And I'm just going to back into this, man, and I'm going to shoot my butt back so that way I'm getting this arm into an overhead position. And the same thing with this as the foam rolling is we want to start to introduce some movement here. So I just don't want to let this passively pull my arm. What I'm going to do is I'm going to sit back into this. I'm going to back up till I get some good tension pulling on that arm so it's pulling in that overhead position. But then I'm going to introduce some internal and external rotations in that shoulder. Begin to actively use those muscles. I'll reach and let the band pull in, and then I'll pull back down against it. And I'll do some kind of posteriorly tilting on the scap, some shrugs and anti-shrugs, internally, externally rotate. And then I can even start to introduce a rotation. So I got my right arm in this. I'm gonna take my right hip and I'm gonna rotate that back. So now it's not just pulling straight overhead, now it's almost pulling up and across my body. And I'm gonna get a really big stretch on that lat there. I'm gonna do the same thing in this position. Begin to introduce internal, externally rotate, reach, pull, lock the tricep out, and just kind of run through some cycles of that. And then the same thing, I mean, huge difference from left to right. Now you can see this right arm is in a much better position. It's that simple. I mean, something that simple can start to clear that up. Now, we don't want to just mobilize. So what we've done is we've done more or less more passive mobility. So we've kind of opened up this range of motion very passively. So, you know, yes, I can get my arm overhead now, but now if I just left and called it a day, then that mobility is not going to stick, okay? The reason we lose mobility is either A, because we never go into those ranges, or B, because our body cannot stabilize in those positions. We cannot produce force in those positions. So now that I've opened this up, I want to strengthen this range of motion. And you can do that's literally as easy as doing something, some kind of overhead press work. So here I just got a kettlebell. I can get a kettlebell here, keep my core tight, and just do some strength work into these new ranges of motion. I can do presses, I can go for holds, and I can even introduce some walking to get some locomotion involved in this stability. I can start to do some Turkish get-ups. We could do some windmills. So now I'm stabilizing in all three planes of motion with that shoulder overhead, and doing work and stabilizing and strengthening now in this new range of motion is gonna help it stick long term. So you never just wanna passively mobilize. If it's like a pre-bed stretch routine to kind of down-regulate, or a post-workout stretch routine to kind of down-regulate and kickstart the recovery process, okay. But if you're doing some mobilizing with the goal of improving your range of motion to try and increase your ability to get in good positions, then after you mobilize, you have to use and strengthen the newfound range of motion if you want it to stick long term. So give that a shot, guys. Let me know how it works, how you like it, and if you need any more ideas. Thanks for watching.